Welcome everyone to Destinations Disney and Universal, the channel where we discuss everything about these incredible theme parks. My favorite childhood memories involve vacations to these amazing destinations. And I've been fortunate enough to watch them change and evolve over the years, sometimes for the better, other times for the worst. But from the first vacation my family took to these parks in 1996, I was completely hooked. Over the years, I was lucky enough to create everlasting memories at these parks multiple times, with each vacation being better than the last. When I got married last year, my wife had never experienced the magic of these parks. So, the only logical choice was to take her there on our honeymoon. And after months of her being annoyed at me for constantly talking about how great these parks are, we went and she understood what my excitement was all about. She now is talking about going back, and let's just say she is not as annoyed with hearing me talk about it as much. Which brings us to this channel. I wanted to share all the information and experiences I've gathered over the years about these parks with an audience. On this channel, we will look at the history of Disney World and Universal Orlando, the incredible rides, the immersive experiences, and everything else that makes Orlando, Florida, one of the top vacation destinations in the world. With all that said, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's begin where the magic in Orlando all started, the history of the Magic Kingdom. You simply cannot talk about Disney World or the Magic Kingdom without first taking a look at the man behind it all. Walt Disney. Born in Chicago in 1901, he first formed Laugh-O-Gram Studios in 1920, and while there, created his first live-action animation short, Alice's Wonderland, which was a 12.5-minute single-reel film in 1923. However, the film was completed too late, and Laugh-O-Gram Studios went bankrupt before the film could be released. As a result of the studio going bankrupt, Walt decided to move out to Hollywood in order to be closer to his brother Roy, who was convalescing from tuberculosis. While out in Hollywood, Walt heard from a New York-based film distributor named Margaret J. Winkler, who was in the process of losing out on the rights to both the Al the Inkwell and Felix the Cat cartoons. Alice decided to take the chance on the comedies and agreed to a contract for 6 Alice films. In order to produce the films, Walt and his brother Roy formed Disney Brothers Studios, which would later become known as the Walt Disney Company. By 1926, Walt had lost interest in Alice and wanted to move on to something new. By this time, Winkler's husband Charles Mintz had taken over distribution. Mintz was looking for new material to distribute through a production company known as Universal Pictures. So, Disney created Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. But when Mintz created the contract, he ensured that he held the rights to Oswald. Mintz then demanded Walt and his brother accept reductions, which they declined, and as a result, Mintz took Oswald to Universal. In response, Disney created a new cartoon character. Perhaps you have heard of him, the legendary Mickey Mouse. Following decades of success with Mickey Mouse and countless other incredible films and characters, Disney moved into theme parks, opening Disneyland in California in July of 1955. Over the years, Disney became annoyed that businesses were purchasing land near the park, which was restricting his ability to expand it. These businesses were typically fast food chains, restaurants, and apparel shops. They were unwilling to sell the land they owned to Disney, as having their businesses so close to the park saw a dramatic increase in their profits. So, as a result, Walt began looking for a different location entirely to continue his theme park venture. What he found was close to 48 square miles of uninhabited swampland in Florida, in and around the small city of Orlando, roughly the size of Manhattan. To avoid an increase in land speculation, Walt geniusly created a series of dummy companies in order to purchase the land. The names of these companies varied from the A4 Corporation, the Latin American Development and Management Corporation, the Reedy Creek Ranch Corporation, and even Walt's name spelled backwards. Some of these names can be seen on a window above Main Street, USA. The prices for the land averaged at about $100 per acre. Unfortunately, Walt would die of lung cancer on December 15th of 1966, before his vision was realized. His brother Roy postponed his retirement in order to oversee the first phase of the construction. On October 1st of 1971, the Magic Kingdom opened alongside the Polynesian and Contemporary resorts. The Magic Kingdom opened with 6 themed lands. 5 were copies which existed in Disneyland, those being Main Street USA, Adventureland, Frontierland, Fantasyland, and Tomorrowland. The 6th land, Liberty Square, was unique to the Magic Kingdom and stems from Walt's love of America. Here is the original layout of the park. The iconic Cinderella's Castle is at the center, with each of the lands stemming off of it, like spokes on a wheel. The park also opened with 23 attractions, 20 of which were copies of attractions featured at Disneyland, and 3 of which were unique to the Magic Kingdom. When it first opened, the park used a per-ride ticket system, with the price of these attractions costing between 10 and 90 cents per ride. If only we could have those prices at Disney World today. The most popular rides were Peter Pan's Flight, and the Haunted Mansion. 2 rides which still exist today. Many other iconic rides, like Pirates of the Caribbean, would not open until 1973, and Space Mountain would not open until the late 70s. Interestingly, Pirates of the Caribbean was never supposed to come over from Disneyland. Disney Imagineers thought that since Florida was so close to real pirates lore, that it would not be interested in a pirate-themed ride. They originally planned to construct a Wild West-themed attraction called Thunder Mesa. However, public outcry was so dramatic that Mesa was quickly scrapped and the Pirates of the Caribbean was constructed. During the 70s and 80s, the park would continue expanding. New restaurants, new shops, new attractions, and new entertainment was added. Walt Disney World was created with the idea of constant change and expansion. After all, Walt purchased way more land than he would ever need. The Swan Boats attraction, long plagued by mechanical issues, would close, although the docks still exist today. A witty show called Flights to the Moon was dated by the time it opened, since the moon landings had occurred a few years earlier. Other shops and attractions would also close in order to make way for future expansion. In 1974, Epcot was announced, with ground being broken in 1979. By the end of 1980, the per-attraction admission was discontinued in favor of the all-day park admission, which exists today. In 1984, Michael Eisner took over the reins of Disney. Eisner was a television executive in children's programming. His focus would be on the bottom line, streamlining operations, and expansion. Aside from changes to entertainment offerings, Magic Kingdom remained largely the same, as Eisner instead focused on the construction of Disney's MGM Studios, Pleasure Island, and Typhoon Lagoon, all of which would open in 1989. The decisions Eisner made to the Magic Kingdom in the 90s would contribute to his fall from grace. Tomorrowland would be the first land to be rehabbed. Struggling with keeping the land relevant with the existence of Epcot, Tomorrowland was completely redone with new paint, classic attractions being closed, and an intentionally retro feel, with the new tagline being, "The future that never was and always will be." This was met with favorable reviews from critics. However, it would be the other changes to the park which would stir up the most controversy. The fan favorite 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea closed in 1994, which started the first wave of protests. The official word from Disney was that it would be undergoing a massive rehab, but in 1996, Disney announced that the ride was closed forever. The lagoon sat for 10 years, full of water, no submarines, and occupying 25% of Fantasyland real estate. During this time, another fan favorite of the park, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, would also close. This time, Disney was honest and announced that the ride would be fully closing in order to make room for a ride based on Winnie the Pooh. However, the honesty was met with similar backlash. Through the power of the internet, massive protests and letter writing campaigns began, but to no avail. Mr. Toad took off for the final time on September 7th, 1998. These closings signaled the beginning of the eventual end of Michael Eisner, who received a 43.4% vote of no confidence on March 3rd, 2004. On September 30th of 2005, Eisner officially stepped down. His replacement, Bob Iger, revitalized the park, beginning with the purchase of Pixar and giving Pixar creator John Lasseter control over Imagineering. The results of his work contributed greatly to the Magic Kingdom that we all know and love today. Speaking of today, let's take a tour around the park and look at the lands and attractions. Upon arriving on the Magic Kingdom property, you will notice the monorail system. Built in 1971, it connects the parking lot, Polynesian Resort, Contemporary Resort, and of course, the Magic Kingdom itself. When designing the park, Walt did not want anything to take away from the illusion, which is why the monorail system exists to transport guests away from the parking lot to the main entrance, ensuring that the parking lot's sights and sounds cannot be noticed by guests once inside the park, thus ensuring the illusion of leaving the real world and entering Disney World is never broken. The monorail would later grow to include a train connecting Epcot, and it is the third busiest monorail in the world, with over 150,000 daily riders. Upon entering the park, guests arrive at Main Street, USA. Symbolically, this represents the opening credits. The buildings are built with architectural influences from around the country, such as New England. The theme is early 20th century America, inspired by Walt's childhood and The Lady and the Tramp. A real barbershop provides haircuts. The Emporium carries a wide variety of Disney souvenirs. Tony's Town Square and the Plaza are sit-down restaurants, and Casey's Corner at the end sells traditional ballpark food like burgers and hot dogs. In the distance, beyond the end of Main Street, sits the iconic Cinderella's Castle. Standing 189 feet tall, it looks much bigger than it actually is due to the building concept of forced perspective, whereas the second stories of all the buildings on Main Street are smaller than the first, and the third stories are even shorter, with the top windows of the castle being smaller than standard, giving the illusion that the castle is much taller than it actually is. Inside the castle sits a highly exclusive hotel room, which is rarely used, and typically is reserved for VIPs. Originally, this was to be the residence for Walt and his family. The castle also hosts Cinderella's Royal Table, a character dining experience. From the front of the castle, down the path representing the right spoke, is Adventureland. Adventureland features the Jungle Cruise, the Magic Carpets of Aladdin, the Pirates of the Caribbean, the Swiss Family Treehouse, and the Enchanted Tiki Room. With there being so many attractions and rides within the Magic Kingdom, we will only have time to highlight a few of them. If you want me to cover additional rides in future videos, let me know in the comment section below. The Jungle Cruise was an opening day attraction. Originally, Walt wanted to utilize real animals for this attraction, but the expense of importing and taking care of real animals was too great for Disney at the time. The goal of Walt having a theme park with real animals would not be realized until the opening of Animal Kingdom in 1998. Instead, the Jungle Cruise features animatronics of real animals. The queue and station are themed as the headquarters of the fictional Jungle Navigation Company. The queue has a plethora of animated props, such as pinned insects. Big band music from the 1920s and 1930s can be heard overhead. The ride takes guests on a journey through some of the most well-known rivers of the world, through the continents of Asia, Africa, and finally finishing at the Amazon River. On my honeymoon, I actually went on this for the first time. And while I did enjoy the queue, the ride does seem dated with the older technology of the animatronics. According to rumors, this ride is set to be given an update to take advantage of newer animatronic technology. That's not to say that this ride is bad by any means. It is excellent for kids. It was just not something that I would personally go out of my way to ride on my next visit. Next is the legendary Pirates of the Caribbean. Opening in 1973, this ride is one of the most iconic attractions in all of Disney World. It has aged like fine wine and is a must-ride on every visit to the Magic Kingdom. It is Disney Imagineering at its absolute best. The ride is guarded by the Watchtower Torre del Sol and is housed by a golden Spanish fort modeled after the Castillo de San Felipe del Morro in Puerto Rico. Guests board a boat which plunges them into a dimly lit cavern where voices are singing the ride's theme song. A second plunge occurs, which takes riders into Dead Man's Cove, where riders can see the skeletal remains of a band of pirates. The boat then sails past an incredible thunderstorm, which is tossing an old pirate ship around. The effects for this are incredible, as you can hear, see, and smell the storm. The ride then continues on until cannonballs are heard whistling overhead as explosions splash water into the air. Guests witness an intense battle between a pirate galleon and a Caribbean fortress. The ride continues through additional scenes, including a town square where riders first see Captain Jack Sparrow, an absolutely incredible animatronic modeled after Johnny Depp from the hit movie series, which was based on this iconic ride. The final scene sees Jack Sparrow sitting in a room full of treasure as guests arrive at the exit. Describing this ride simply does not do it enough justice. Just make sure that you go on this ride on your next visit because it is absolutely incredible. Continuing straight through Adventureland will bring guests to Frontierland. Frontierland is where guests will have the opportunity to ride both Splash Mountain and Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Frontierland is the smallest land of the park, having only opened with 3 attractions: the Walt Disney World Railroad, Davy Crockett's Explorer Canoes, and the Country Bear Jamboree. Only the Jamboree still remains, with Big Thunder Mountain having opened in 1980 and then Splash Mountain opening in 1992. As stated earlier, covering every ride and attraction at the Magic Kingdom would make this video last hours, so I had to narrow it down to a select few. But if you want me to cover either of these attractions in a future video, make sure you let me know in the comments section. Backtracking through Adventureland will take guests to Liberty Square. Liberty Square is almost like an annex to Main Street, USA. With the park opening in 1971, Disney wanted to create something which would help to celebrate America's upcoming bicentennial. So, unlike New Orleans Square, which can be found in the same location off Main Street at Disneyland, in the Magic Kingdom, the land would be called Liberty Square and was given an 18th century theme with architecture based on the American Revolution. It is the only land which has not undergone a refurbishment throughout its entire existence and features 3 attractions: the Hall of Presidents, Liberty Square riverboats, and the iconic Haunted Mansion. This is another attraction which could easily be a half-hour-long video on its own. The lore which has developed over the years for this fan favorite has caused the ride to take on a life of its own. An opening day attraction, when the original mansion was being constructed in Disneyland, copies of every prop and animatronic were made for the Magic Kingdom version. Also, because the Magic Kingdom has more space, this version is actually longer than Disneyland's. Guests enter the queue through the carriage houses, with the foreboding mansion looming in the distance. In 2011, Imagineers created an interactive queue for the Haunted Mansion of busts and crypts tied to the attraction's lore and serving as tributes to the attraction's original Imagineers. There are even mysteries and puzzles to solve while guests wait. The queue also showcases the mansion's classic tombstones with punny inscriptions like, quote, "Here lies good old Fred. A great big rock fell on his head." And, quote, "Dear departed brother Dave, he chased a bear into a cave." Guests then move onto the waiting platform and into the doom buggies for their journey through the mansion. This ride tells the story of a Black Widow bride and her many husbands. The special effects are terrific, especially the duelers in the ballroom scene and the staircase scene. In typical Disney fashion, attention is paid to the finest details. You'll notice something different every time you go on this incredible ride. 999 ghosts take residence in this mansion. Will you be number 1000? The ride is absolute genius, and like Pirates of the Caribbean, has aged like fine wine. The special effects are stunning, and even with this being a slow-moving dark ride, it is a must-ride attraction during every Magic Kingdom visit. This brief description of the ride simply does not do it justice, and I'm looking forward to doing an entire video about this ride in the future. But, for the purposes of this video, if you want to see the true talent and genius of Disney Imagineering and storytelling, look no further than this iconic experience. Continuing through Liberty Square, you will arrive behind Cinderella's castle inside Fantasyland. Fantasyland has 3 areas: the castle courtyard, the Enchanted Forest, and Storybook Circus. 12 rides can be found in Fantasyland. The first area you come to from Liberty Square is the castle courtyard, which is home to Peter Pan's Flight, Prince Charming's Regal Carousel, It's a Small World, and Filler Magic 3D. It's a Small World for me is a skip. It's great for kids, but for me personally, I would never ride it again, and haven't gone on it in over a decade. The carousel is also excellent for kids, although I admittedly have never gone on it that I can remember. Filler Magic is a hidden gem of the park. It does not get as much attention as the other big ticket rides like Pirates of the Caribbean, Splash Mountain, The Haunted Mansion, or Space Mountain, but in my opinion, it is a must-see experience. It is a 3D show with incredible effects, which showcases the true magic of 3D technology. Very enjoyable, and I highly recommend it to anyone. Peter Pan's Flight is also enjoyable, although I could skip it. But I have a funny story. On my honeymoon, we were on our way leaving the park, having just gone on Filler Magic, on our way walking back to the main entrance, and my wife noticed Peter Pan's Flight, so we quickly went on it, and she said she would have been mad had we skipped it. So, needless to say, I do not actually think I will ever be skipping this ride on any future visits. Continuing on, you will come to the Enchanted Forest, which hosts Mad Tea Party, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and the ride I will talk about briefly, the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. It is a steel roller coaster which opened as part of the Fantasyland expansion in 2014, known as New Fantasyland. It is unique to the Magic Kingdom and Shanghai Disneyland. There are no plans to construct a coaster in California at the time of making this video. The ride has guests bustling through a mountain mine with the Seven Dwarfs. The scenery of the queue line is incredible, and fans of the iconic movie can find many objects and animations featured in the film. It travels both indoors and outdoors and features a new ride system known as a tilting vehicle, which simulates the swaying of a minecart. Traveling 34 miles per hour with a 39-foot drop, it is admittedly not the fastest roller coaster, but the theming for it more than makes up for it. To put it into perspective, I am a huge fan of fast coasters like Aerosmith, the Hulk, and the Rip Ride Rocket at Disney and Universal respectively. That said, I really enjoyed this coaster and feel that it is for sure a must ride for kids and adults alike. The theming and story of this 2.5-minute ride really make this attraction memorable. I will include my personal ride video here for you all to enjoy.
Hi-ho! Hi-ho! Hi-ho!
Going around Seven Dwarfs Mine Train to the left, you will come across Be Our Guest Restaurant. In future videos, I plan to cover dining experiences, but I will briefly talk about Be Our Guest here. My wife is a huge fan of Beauty and the Beast, so we absolutely had to eat here on our honeymoon. The theming is flawless. It is as if you have just walked into the Beast Castle. It has 3 dining areas: the Grand Ballroom, the West Wing, and the Rose Gallery. We requested the West Wing. The highlight of this area was the enchanted rose sitting inside of its case. It is loud due to the thunderstorm effects in the windows of the room, but it is not so loud that it takes away from the experience. The food is obviously French-inspired dishes. You pay a set price, which for us was $60 a person. This price gets you a drink, an appetizer, a main course, and a dessert. The food was very good, and the dessert was very artistic in that one of the items was actually shaped like Chip. If you have the money, this dining experience is well worth it, and I would highly recommend everyone eat here at least once. Leaving Be Our Guest will take you to Storybook Circus. These are mainly rides for the kids like Dumbo the Flying Elephant and carnival-inspired attractions. Not going to mention them here, as I do not spend much time in this part on my visits. This finally brings us to the final land of the park, Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland is the part of the park which, as mentioned earlier, has undergone the most drastic changes since the park opened in 1971, with a major refurbishment being done in 1994. Tomorrowland has 7 attractions, with an 8th, the Tron Coaster, currently being under construction. I will briefly mention 2. Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin is an interactive shooting dark ride that sees guests fighting Zurg alongside Buzz. These types of rides were innovative when they were first released, as evidenced by Universal building Men in Black around the same time. The ride type has been more fine-tuned, as you will see when we cover Hollywood Studios in a future video. Nonetheless, it is still a great deal of fun, and if you have the time, it is definitely worth experiencing. The Carousel of Progress is a nice relaxing break from the Florida sun and shows how humans have changed over time through advances in technology and electricity. Originally debuting at the 1964 New York's World's Fair, it was first moved to Disneyland in 1973 and then moved to the Magic Kingdom in 1975. It is a fun experience, and if you're tired or just need a break, I highly recommend checking this one out. Which brings us to our final ride, Space Mountain. Space Mountain was originally conceived as a Disneyland attraction by Walt, following the success of the Matterhorn bobsleds in 1959. But technological limitations and the ongoing plans for Disney World led to the ride being delayed until the late 60s. It would not be until 1975 that Space Mountain would open in the Magic Kingdom. The ride is a dark-themed roller coaster, with much of the ride occurring in complete darkness, aside from the very dimly lit stars, simulating rocketing and traveling through outer space. There are many twists and turns as the riders travel at 27 miles per hour, but due to the theming, layout, and darkness of the ride, it feels much faster. Racing through the solar system and encountering a 26-foot drop from 90 feet in the air, guests finally arrive back at a loading station. Again, a very brief description of the ride which does not do it justice. While it does feel outdated in comparison to other rides, There are actually much better rides than this at Universal, such as the Revenge of the Mummy, which is similar in concept. But Space Mountain is still a very iconic ride and is absolutely worth your time to experience at least once. At the time of its release, it was consistently rated as the best ride in the world by theme park gurus. Presently, it is a very serviceable attraction and showcases Disney Imagineering, making what is truly a very slow ride in comparison to other coasters feel much faster with theming and track construction. I usually go on this ride every time I visit, and you will not regret taking the time to experience it on your next visit either. That now brings us to the end of the Magic Kingdom. This video ran much longer than I originally anticipated, but the Magic Kingdom demands that much respect. With it being the first park built in Disney World, Walt's life had to at least be mentioned briefly in the beginning, because without Walt, none of the magic would exist. The Magic Kingdom is usually one of the first parks people think of when talking about Disney World, if not just for the iconic Cinderella's Castle serving as a centerpiece. But this park also does have plenty of fun and iconic Disney rides for guests of all ages to enjoy. Pirates of the Caribbean, the Haunted Mansion, and Space Mountain are all legendary in their own right and provide guests with an exhibition into the true genius of Disney Imagineering. With all that said, please remember to like and subscribe, and let me know of any rides or restaurants or anything else you'll want me to cover in a future video in the comments section below. Next time, we will continue our history and overview series of Orlando parks by looking at the next park which opened, the experimental prototype Community of Tomorrow, otherwise known as Epcot. I hope you all enjoyed, and we will see you next time.